Hopefully he can hear us. Commissioner Clemente,
Present.
Chair Stump. You have a quorum.
There's Greg.
Can you hear me now? I'm here.
Next order of business is introductions. I'll start with Commissioner Witt, and we'll go through the commissioners, then go through the audience.
Okay, I'm Christopher Witt. I'm the commissioner representing Bernalillo County and a professor at UNM and ornithologist.
Good morning, Commissioner Lopez, District 3. Good to see you all. Happy New Year. And let's get to work. Hi, I'm Richard Stump. I'm chair of the commission, lifelong resident of New Mexico, and proud to be here.
Fernando Clemente from Sunland Park, New Mexico. I am a commissioner at large and wildlife biologist.
Mike Sloan, director of the department.
Commissioner Fulfer.
Greg Pulfer, Commissioner, District 1.
Good morning, commissioners, members of the public. Stuart Liley, Chief of Wildlife, New Mexico Game and Fish.
Good morning, John Crenshaw with New Mexico Wildlife Federation, and from a long time ago with Game and Fish.
Julian Gonzalez, cattle permittee, New Mexico Wildlife Federation.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Jesse Dubell, Executive Director, New Mexico Wildlife Federation.
Happy New Year, commissioners. I'm Charlie Trask. I'm just a private citizen, like to hunt fish. Thank you.
I'm Matthew Lovato. I'm a private citizen that just wants to get involved at Game and Fish.
Howdy, Tom Patterson, cattle rancher from Catron County, live at Luna. I serve as president of the New Mexico Cattle Growers Association.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, good morning. I'm Pat Block, just appearing on my own behalf this morning and also formerly with Game and Fish, just not quite as long ago as John.
Good morning, all. Garth Reeder, Los Alamos, New Mexico.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kirk Patton, Chief of Fisheries for the department.
Good morning, everybody. Colin Duff. I'm our major for our field operations with the department.
Good morning, commissioners, members of the public. My name is Paul Varela. I'm the Chief of Administrative Services.
Good morning, commissioners, public. Tim Simbel. I'm the colonel with field operations with Department of Game and Fish.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Carrie Romero, Executive Director, New Mexico Council of Outfitters and Guides.
Good morning, Commissioner Sean Carroll, Lieutenant over Revocations.
Good morning, commissioners, members of the public. I'm Jeremy Martin. I'm the department's general counsel.
Good morning, everyone. I am Della Joyner, and I am the Northern Public Information Specialist for New Mexico Game and Fish.
Good morning, commissioners. I'm Darren Vaughn. I'm the Communications Director for New Mexico Department of Game and Fish.
Good morning, commissioners and public. I'm Kurt Kaufman. I'm the Assistant Chief of Education.
Good morning. My name is Natasha Montoya. I'm the Assistant Chief of Information.
Good morning. I'm Isaac Romero, Systems Administrator, Game and Fish.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Eric Arce, and I'm a photographer and editor.
Good morning. I'm Rebecca Archuleta, HR Director for the agency.
Good morning, everyone. Tristana Carroll. I'm the Chief of the Information and Education. Chief of the Information Education Division. We currently have 12 people online, but nobody has expressed interest in introducing themselves yet.
Thank you, Tristana. Thank you, everyone. Excuse me. We need to approve today's agenda. Is there any discussion on the agenda, commissioners? Okay. Is there a motion?
I so move to approve the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
No discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No opposed. Motion passes. Agenda item number 5. Annually, we elect chair and vice chair. But before we do that, I'd like to thank all of our commissioners for all the hard work you've all done. It takes a lot of time, a lot of sacrifice, and I appreciate all the help you've all given me in the past year. And I'd also like to give a shout out to Sharon Hickey, who most of you probably know she resigned this week. I'm going to miss her in particular. And I think we all are. She was very helpful to me in the past years. She's off on a big adventure with her husband, and we wish her the best of luck and Godspeed. So on that note, is there a motion to nominate chair and vice chair? He would like for you to lead the election.
Okay. As you just said, is there, we can do it two ways. We can do a motion for the chair and a motion for vice chair. We could do it all as one, whichever way you're comfortable with. So is there a motion for chair and vice chair or either?
Mr. Secretary, I'd like to nominate Richard Stump for chair of the State Game Commission and Fernando Clemente for vice chair of the State Game Commission.
Thank you. Second that. Second from Commissioner Fulfer. Thank you. Do we want to just do a voice vote or do you want to do a roll call?
I think a voice vote would be appropriate.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations, Chairman Stump and Vice Chair Clemente.
Thank you, everyone. I would like to welcome Fernando Clemente as our vice chair, our new vice chair, taking Commissioner Hickey's place. Commissioner Clemente is another very helpful individual. Anytime I've needed any help or any meetings anywhere in the state, he has been available and made himself available. And I'd like to commend you in all the work you've done and looking forward to working with you this coming year, as all the rest of you. Okay, item number 6, we need to approve the minutes of our Los Alamos meeting. Any discussion of the minutes? Okay, is there a motion for approval? Motion to approve, Mr. Chair. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
No discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any- No, motion passes. Moving right along, item number 7, approval of hunting and fishing privileges, revocations. Commissioners, we all received the packet, the information on this item. Are there any questions for Colonel Symbol or any discussion? Okay, is there a motion? I guess we're looking at it.
I move to accept the revocation recommendations as submitted by the department.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Aye. No opposed, motion passes. Short and sweet, fellas. Thank you, fellas. Annually, we must adopt an Open Meetings Act resolution. Director Sloan, can you give us a summarize of that resolution, please?
Mr. Chairman, as you just stated, the Open Meetings Act requires that you adopt a resolution that spells out how you will notice meetings, the timelines and that sort of thing. So we have the 2026 draft in your packets. It lays out public notice must be posted promptly, emailed to broadcast stations and newspapers, emailed to individuals who have requested it. Meetings and agenda must be posted as soon as practicable, but not less than 72 hours prior to a meeting. Again, posted prominently on the website. Regular meetings, public notice should be provided as soon as practical, but not less than 10 calendar days. Special meetings, again, as soon as practical, but not less than 72 hours. And emergency meetings, reasonable effort should be made to provide public notice before. when possible and after an emergency matter is considered, including an explanation at the next meeting of any action taken and the circumstances creating an emergency. Discusses the inadvertent quorum and noticing those, discusses Americans with Disabilities Act, that we provide notices that are accessible. And finally, it allows for remote participation when it is difficult or otherwise impossible for a member to attend in person. So that's the brief summary. Every public body is required to adopt an annual Open Meetings Act resolution, and so this is same as it was pretty much every year before this. Just change the dates.
Any discussion with the commission? I have some discussion, please. And looking at our meeting location and dates, I wondered if we would consider having a meeting in Las Cruces.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I don't think we're on
that's
that.
our next item. Okay. We're still in the Open Meetings Act. Anybody else? Anything?
Yeah, a couple people have mentioned to me that the agendas are posted late for planning purposes. I'm wondering if you could just address when you typically post the finalized agenda and whether it's possible to post a draft agenda earlier than we normally do.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Witt, we try very hard to get them posted as soon as practicable. Often it boils down to figuring out what notices have been put out for rulemaking and then coordinating with the chair to ensure we've got all the items. I think we've been pretty good about meeting that 10-day here recently, but I think we can certainly try to get them out a little bit earlier this year with all the rulemaking. I think we'll get them out pretty promptly, so.
But we typically have them at least 10 days before, right? Okay. Any more discussion? Is there a motion?
I so move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed, motion passes. So now item number 9. Proposed commission meeting dates and locations. We're going to have a full year of meetings this year, as we will be doing a lot of rulemaking. Director and staff have developed a schedule of meetings that gets us through the rulemaking as efficiently as possible. Director Sloan is going to present the proposed schedule.
Looking in the right one. As the chairman just noted, we have a full year of rulemaking, so there are a lot more meetings this year than there have been in previous years. The dates of these meetings were selected because of the publication dates in the New Mexico Register to ensure that we could efficiently get hearings noticed. So the dates are very much inflexible. The locations, we tried to pick places around the state that we haven't been and places where we could have meetings with relative ease. Certainly, I think Commissioner Lopez has a suggestion about changing a location. We're certainly open to that, but this was kind of where we were thinking. So we have January 9th. All of them are on Fridays, February 20th, except for the June meeting, which is a Thursday. Again, that's because of vacation dates and making sure that we can get stuff processed and out to records and archives, put in the New Mexico Register in a timely fashion. So that's pretty straightforward.
What were you thinking?
Chair, members of the commission, I was thinking of having a meeting in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and possibly Lordsburg or Deming in the Boot Heel. We do have a lot of stakeholders in the Boot Heel. We haven't had a meeting there in, I don't know, a while, maybe
4 or 5 years. I think
Yeah,
we met
4 or
in
5
Deming at
years.
one point.
Las Cruces, we do have a vice chair down there now. Congratulations, Mr. Vice Chair. Kind of try to spread around between the districts. I don't know if the commission would consider moving the February 20th meeting from Roswell to Las Cruces, and maybe the May 29th from Farmington to Lordsburg.
Well, then that puts a majority of the meetings in the southern part of the state, doesn't it?
So one in Santa Fe, Albuquerque, we still have Vegas in the north, Socorro Central, and then in 27, I'm not concerned about 27 anymore.
Yeah. How would you guys feel about going ahead and adapting this and then talking about that? We'll keep the dates and then talk about the places. Or should we do that now?
Mr. Chairman, I think from a public perspective, that probably there are folks who would like to know whether they have to drive all the way to Lordsburg or whether they're going to Roswell in February. So I would point out that Lordsburg's a long way. And we have had a meeting there during my career, but I don't think we've had more than one. Deming is a little closer. Might be splitting the difference between Las Cruces and Lordsburg by going to Deming. It's your discretion.
I have comment. I think either Las Cruces or Deming, I think it will be very beneficial, especially for what is coming out for this year. I agree. I think it will be better Deming than Lordsburg on this case. Or Las Cruces.
I'm okay with Deming. Good onion soup.
Deming be good.
And is that for the February meeting you're thinking?
No, the May meeting. It will be replacing Farmington for Deming.
So the May 29th meeting. I'm good with that. Everybody else? All right, let's adopt that. So Deming on May 29th.
So we'll have Santa Fe today, Roswell, February 20th. March 20th will be in Albuquerque, May 29th in Deming, June 25th in Portales, which is a Thursday again, August 21st in Las Vegas, November 13th in Socorro, January 15th back here in Santa Fe.
Commissioner Clemente, would you desire to have a meeting in Las Cruces?
I would like to have a meeting in Las Cruces, of course. But at the same time, I think it is important to hear from everybody. So, I mean, having a meeting on Deming, I'm sure that will cover some people that wants to go and speak from Las Cruces to Deming. It's not that far. But if the possibility is there, I mean, I'm always for it.
Could we move Socorro the November 13th to Las Cruces, quail season?
If we're gonna change locations, that would be the location I would recommend. Anybody else? Go ahead, Greg.
I like the Las Cruces on November 13th.
Okay, so let's go ahead and change that.
With the May 29th and the November 13th, Deming and Las Cruces changes, everybody's good?
Yep.
Excellent.
Thank you, Director Swan. Is there any public comment on that? Nope.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. We did get one comment in the chat that said Espanola and Chama or Cuba sometime as well for the north.
Commissioners, how do you feel about the northern locations that we currently have? We have Santa Fe, Las Vegas, Santa Fe. Santa Fe is the last meeting next year, or the first meeting next year. So first meeting today, first meeting next year.
I think by statute, we're required to meet 1 year annually in Santa Fe. Is that correct, Mike?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Lopez, that's been the interpretation, yes.
To move Las Vegas to Chama.
Tell me about Las Vegas. Is it we've been there very often or occasionally?
Being told about 4 years ago, we were there.
4 years ago?
4 or 5 years ago. I think that's probably about the frequency that we've been there. I think 3 or 4 times during my career. So.
Well, I'm good at leaving Las Vegas. That represents northern New Mexico. And there's a lot of activity there. Anybody else? So, shall we just leave it as is? We'll call it good?
Well, I would recommend leave it as how we change it a minute. I mean, no more changes.
No more changes. Okay, let's adopt this.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, item number 10. This is a rule hearing. Manner and Method Rule 19.31.10 NMAC shed hunting. This hearing will please come to order. My name is Richard Stunt, Chair of the Commission. I will be serving as hearing officer and be advised by the Commission's counsel. The purpose of this hearing is for the Commission to receive public comment on amending the Manner and Method Rule Title 19, Chapter 31, Part 10, New Mexico Administrative Code, respectively, which will become effective on April 1st, 2026. This hearing is being conducted in accordance with the provisions of the Game and Fish Act and the State Rules Act. This hearing is being audio taped and video recorded. Anyone interested in a copy of the audio tape or video recording should contact Darren Vaughn in the Game and Fish Department. Public notice of this hearing was advertised in the New Mexico Register, New Mexico Sunshine Portal, and on the department's website. Copies of the proposed rules have been available on the department's website. Those wishing to comment here today must have registered to submit public comments. The rule hearing will be conducted in the following manner. Staff will present pre-filed exhibits. Exhibits admitted into evidence are available for review by the public on the department's website. After all exhibits are entered, we will proceed to the presentation of the proposed rule, after which testimony will be taken from the audience. Participants are asked to wait until they are called upon to speak. In order to ensure that the hearing is accurately recorded, only one person at a time shall be allowed to speak. Any person recognized to speak is asked to identify yourself by name and who you're affiliated with for the record each time you are recognized. Speak loud and clear to accurately record your comments. After a person is offered comment, they will stand for questions from the hearing officer. The audience may also ask questions of anyone offering comments after being recognized by me. This hearing is not subject to judicial rules of evidence. However, in the interest of efficiency, I reserve the right to limit any testimony deemed irrelevant, redundant, or unduly repetitious. The Commission may discuss the proposed new rule after the public comment portion of the hearing. Final Commission action, including adoption of the rule, may occur after the conclusion of the presentation and public comment period of the hearing. Hearing item number 10, Manner and Method 19.31.10 NMAC. To name the exhibits to enter into record.
Chair Stump, Commissioners, yes, I do. I have 10 exhibits. The first one is the notice of proposed rulemaking. The second, summary of proposed changes. Third is the technical information relied upon. 4 and 5 are from the public meetings that were held in person. 6 is all of those comments that we received. 7 is a proposed changes copy from October of 25. And 8 is a clean copy from November 25. 9 is a proposed changes from the 11/25 meeting that we had. We changed a few things. That's in here. And then 10 is the presentation.
Okay, 10 exhibits are admitted into the record. Colonel Simmel, please introduce the manner and method rule.
Sure. Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. Agenda item number 10 is the rule hearing as discussed for the manner and method 1931-10-9E, possession of game animal parts found in the field. So a little bit of background for this. During the 2025 legislative session, new legislation was passed, and that included a change in 1732 in the classes of licenses. It added a shed hunter license, and the wording of that shed hunter license is that it entitles the licensee to shed hunting, provided that a shed hunter license shall not be required for shed hunting by a resident. And it also added in 17.313, which are our license fee, it put a $200 fee for that non-resident shed hunter license. So the proposal that I'm proposing this morning in front of you is highlighted here. So residents do not need a shed hunter license. That was very clearly written out in statute. Non-residents require a shed hunter license to possess more than 2 shed antlers found in the field. And all shed antlers collected in violation of commission rule remain property of the state and shall be seized. So the entirety of the clean version that I would be looking to get approved this morning would be 1931-10-9E would read, possession of game animal parts found in the field. It is unlawful to possess heads, horns, antlers, or other parts of protected species found in the field without an invoice, permit, or license from the department, with the exception of obviously shed antlers for residents and no more than 2 obviously shed antlers for non-residents. For any non-resident, it is unlawful to possess more than 2 obviously shed antlers found in the field without a shed hunter license. Residents do not require a shed hunter license. All shed antlers collected in violation of commission rule, in violation of any state or federal land closure, in violation of criminal trespass, in violation of the Habitat Protection Act, while driving off-road on public land or on a closed road on public land, remain property of the state of New Mexico and shall be seized. And this is just a summary of the public outreach that we did, also included in the exhibits. So we held 2 public comment meetings. One was in Albuquerque on July 17th of 2025, the other in Las Cruces a week later on July 24th, 2025. For the total of those both meetings, we had 2 and 2 for a total of 4. We received 38 written comments, and we did and posted the rulemaking notice November 18th, 2025. And during that period, we received 2 additional comments. And with that, I'll show you a wonderful picture of the Field Operations Division and stand for questions.
Commissioners, any questions for Colonel Simmel? I'd just like to say thank you for all your hard work. Getting this done takes a lot to do, and you and your team, once again, appreciate that. We do have a Tom Patterson would like to make a comment today.
Thank you, Commissioners. Tom Patterson, President, New Mexico Cattle Growers Association. I was at your reserve meeting where you discussed the shed rule. We didn't offer comments in because we didn't have policy, and we only try to address issues where we have formal policy. We have considered the issues significantly since that time, and during our December meeting, we did adopt policy. I forwarded a copy of that shed resolution to Director Sloan, to Chairman Stump, and to Mr. Lively earlier this week. The conversation that we had is that we certainly support the recommendation from the Council of Outfitters and Guides to establish a shed season, a shed hunting season from May 1 through December 31st. The reason that was given by our members who are out on the landscape as part of their living is that during shed season, folks go in there with ATVs and side-by-sides, especially during March and so forth, when snows are melting, and they beat up the country. They're making 2-track roads throughout our country, and that is devastating to erosion, to trying to maintain the integrity of our landscape. There are other issues. When they go through the country, they often, not always, but often, our shed hunters throw down our gates, they cut our fences, or they just make it a lay-down fence. They go over the top. They're side by side. So the cattle that we have in those pastures that are typically calving in the spring are now getting out of those pastures and going into other pastures, which means now we're going to be in violation of our rotational grazing rules with the Forest Service or the BLM or the State Land Office. So, and there's another issue too. It's just elk. Talking to our local outfitters and guides in Catron County, they say the elk never get a break. They're choused year round, whether it's from shed hunters or scouts or the hunters. Give them a break. So we would, our policy reads, whereas elk and deer shed their antlers beginning in March, which is when many range cows are calving or have young calves, whereas antlers have significant monetary value, and whereas the demand for antlers leads many commercial businesses and hunters to seek them, and whereas gathering sheds may harass wildlife, stress cattle, involve cut fences, down gates, and rangeland degradation due to the use of ATVs and side-by-sides, and whereas livestock producers are committed to wise stewardship of the land, livestock, and associated wildlife, therefore be it resolved, Cattle Growers supports state rules or regulations to implement a shed hunting season and the appropriation of state funding to provide meaningful enforcement of those rules and regulations. So we'd respectfully request, whether it's now or when you revisit the rule, which you indicated you would, in reserve, you'd be willing to do down the road when you see how this works, we would urge you to adopt a season from May 1 through December 31st and to have meaningful law enforcement to back it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. I believe that this is the first time we've had this in our state, so it is going to be a period of discovery, and hopefully it all works out in a positive manner. And appreciate that and all your work again. Thank you so much. I guess that's it for any more comments. So,
Chairman, I had a couple of questions.
Go ahead, Greg.
Tim, what's the possession for the resident?
So as Chair Commissioner Fulfer, it was pretty clear in the legislation and the intent of it, as well as clearly the way they wrote it, that they didn't want to require any sort of license for residents. So there is no limit for residents of the state of New Mexico.
So if somebody's out of state, they can hire a resident to do their collection?
Chair, Commissioner, I suppose one could, yes.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, the challenge might be that when the transfer occurred from the resident to the non-resident, they would still have to have a permit.
Okay, I was just wanting to clarify that to see how that worked. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fulfer. Commissioner Lopez has a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I I can sympathize with President Patterson. Congratulations on your new office, sir, of the cattle growers. In northern New Mexico, we have the same problems that they're having in the south. We have numerous maybe groups of ATVers and side-by-sides that do go tear up the landscape. I don't know if you all know this, but the Carson National Forest actually closes. They're closed right now, actually, in Unit 51 for any type of hunting or activity until May 31st due to elk calving. So with that closure, that pushes a lot of the ATV use towards our state land leases, our BLM leases, our private property, and the 51B, and they just damage everything. I mean, there's cutting fences, they are making the 2-track roads, and of course, if you want to make extra money, just walk by any weekend and pick up all the beer cans and bottles they're leaving, because you fill up 3 or 4 trash bags on a weekend and take it to get the recycling done. So I strongly encourage us that we should consider, and as I had before, a shed hunting season. And of course, legislation did not allow us to charge residents a nominal $5, $10 fee for shed hunting. But I think we should have some type of season to restrict that because they do damage the landscape and the benefit of wildlife and erosion, and in our stakeholders that have livestock and sheep. It does cause problems. And I do commend the Field Operations Division for all the enforcement that they have done. They have done great targeted enforcement areas for ATVs. But in the spring, as we all know, now we're getting some snow, thank God. Hopefully we get some more. Our roads are just torn apart. The fences are torn apart. And I wish there was a BLM range con here that can tell you the damage they do all over the northern part of the Farmington field office. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Lopez. I agree with all your sentiments. Commissioner Clemente, did you have something you'd like to say?
Just for clarification, so the residents does not need a commercial license, correct? They can pick as many as they want.
Chair, Commissioners, that is correct.
What was that? Is that it? Okay.
I have a question. Here.
Go ahead.
What's the going rate now per pound on antlers?
So around Chair, Commissioners, when it's at around its highest, because it fluctuates depending on demand and other things, but around the highest I've seen it in the last 5 to 10 years is about 19 a pound. It's fluttering right around 15 to 16 a pound right now.
And that's for like a complete set, probably
just per pound.
Per pound. So
You can fetch more for a complete matching set, sure. Yeah, you're not gonna sell that by pound. You're gonna sell that for the worth of what it really is when it's a trophy size.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to close the hearing unless there's any more comments. No more. Those that registered and participated in the hearing will be included on the attendance sheet. At this time, the attendance sheet shall be marked and admitted as exhibit number 11. The comments submitted and testimony heard during this rule hearing will be reviewed by the commission and discussed during the open session of today's meeting. The commission will vote on the proposed rule at that time. I would like to thank everyone present for their participation today. Let the record show that this rulemaking hearing was adjourned at 9:45 a.m. Is there a motion or any more discussion? Is there a motion, please?
I so move to adopt amendments to the manner of method rule 19.31.10 NMAC related to shed hunting and presented by the department with an effective date of April 1st, 2026, including potential minor edits and required by the state records and archives.
Is there a second?
Second.
No more discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No opposed, motion passes. You opposed? I think, Director Sloan, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Witt,
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez,
No.
Commissioner Fulfer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Clemente,
Yes.
Chair Stump.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, moving on to item number 11, revocation trends. Pursuant to a commission request, the department has developed a presentation on revocation trends for our information. Thanks for doing that, guys. I believe Commissioner Hickey requested that, and I think it's a good idea. So please proceed with your presentation.
Chair, Commissioners, thank you. Yeah, I think you find some interesting information in this. So agenda item 11, revocation trends. So we've got a few slides that we'll go through here. This is basically, we did the last 5 years is what we took for it. So 2020 through the completion of 2025. This is a synopsis of the license sales. Your blue are resident license sales, and your orange are non-resident license sales. So you can see there's between a roughly 25 to 30% that goes to non-residents in license sales. And if you have any questions throughout it, just stop me. This is a citation trend. So again, the number of citations is on the left side there, starting around the 2400 mark, 2307. So in 2020, and the blue represents the percentage of citations written to residents. The orange represents the percentage of citations written to non-residents. You can see a slight rise. Obviously, the COVID dip in the 2020-ish, 2021 timeframe, things were a little bit slow, and it has been picking up at a pretty drastic rate, which is something that I like to see. Officers are doing wonderful work out there and mentoring one another and really making a difference for New Mexico's resources. Here's our revocations of residents versus non-resident. Once again, blue is your resident, orange is your non-resident. So what you kind of see here is roughly, between 10 or 8 and 12%, a little dip in 23, but the blue is your non-resident revocations, and the total numbers by year. For instance, 2020, there were 77, 2023, 62, and 2025 and 2024 have quite a rise. But as you saw from the previous graph, we also have quite a rise in citations written. So the more citations you write, obviously the more people are likely to get revoked. And this is just the total revocations over the years. And then the average revocation time is on the bottom, slightly hovering above the 3-year mark. 3 is typically the most common recommendation. That can change when it's second, third violation of revocation. And you can see just the total numbers. Little dip there after COVID time, because there's a little bit of tail end, the citations written and the points accrued. It's about within a year that they're actually going to be revoked. So a little dip after the pandemic. And then again, curving up as we increase the number of citations that we are writing. These are the enhanced revocations throughout the last 5 years. So the blue is again resident. And no. I get this. Okay, so this is the enhanced. So in 2020, there were 11 enhanced revocations. And then during that year, the max time of revocation period was somebody got revoked for 10 years. And you can see that carried throughout to 2024. And then in 2025, we had an individual that was revoked for 20.
Explain the enhanced again, please.
Enhanced is generally going to be anything over the 3 years. So if we go in front of a hearing officer and the hearing officer requests longer, if we bring it in front of the commission and you request longer, or if the department, if it's 40 points or more and we therefore request longer, like we did at the last commission meeting, that would be an enhanced one. This is suspended for not paying penalty assessment. So resident versus non-resident. So in 2020, there were 215 people that got caught doing something illegal, chose the penalty assessment option where they agree guilt and they agree to pay via mail. That did not. And kind of concerning, obviously, it's on a rise. The more citations you write, the more people are, not going to send the payment. But what this ultimately does is it suspends their hunting and fishing privileges until they pay it. And then, as you've seen in multiple commission meetings, those folks that are getting 5-10 years for fishing because they just keep getting caught fishing without a license and are on revocation and they just kind of won't change. You've seen a lot of those. Those are the people that fit in this category. These are for the PRAs, the Parental Responsibility Act suspensions. Pretty steady throughout the years. These are the people that are not caught up on their child support. Resident versus non-resident. This one's pretty interesting. This is civil assessments. So within statute, when an individual unlawfully kills one of New Mexico's wildlife, protected wildlife, most of them, if not all, have a civil assessment, which is replacing the cost of that animal to the state. And around the time I came on, I visited with our director, and we really wanted to start pushing towards collecting these civil assessments. So we worked with our legal team. So we'll ask for either voluntary civil, and if they won't do that, we can go through the court process. And our legal team has been very helpful with that, filing the motions, filing stuff in civil court, so we can chase these down. But you can see in 2023, when that direction kind of changed, a drastic number of civils collected. And that's money back to the Department of Game and Fish when we collect that from somebody unlawfully killing one of our animals. And civil-wise, this is a total amount assessed. 2020 was a big year. There was a pretty big case during that one that led to that being a lot. Otherwise, 21 and 22, and then you'll see your spikes in 23 from when we had officers pursue civil and had support from our legal team to do so. And the next slide is just that wonderful picture again. So if you want me to go back on any.
Could you go back to the last slide, please? So just to get an idea of how many people we're talking about that are paying these fines, let's go with 2023. How many people total to come to that total of $49,000 and $370?
It was 40 individuals.
40 individuals. So it's an average of 10,000, 1,000. To that average of 1,000, yeah. Okay, thank you. Commissioners, anybody else have any questions or discussion? Commissioner Witt?
Yeah, Chief Simple, you mentioned the COVID dip a couple times. Can you explain what caused that? Because it seemed like it was present in certain data like the citations, but not in the licenses.
Chair, Commissioners, yes, during that time, we had a different colonel at the time, and there was some direction to be a little more lenient with things as far as violations. Not saying that we were looking the other way or anything. We were absolutely out there enforcing the violations. But sometimes maybe education or a warning was the tool appropriate for the situation rather than a citation.
So if we look back before 2020, which you didn't show in the slides here, would we see citations higher or steady or?
Chair, Commissioners, they're slightly higher before that. It pretty much goes in, let's start with 2010. You're kind of going to have one of these. Your pandemic, it lowers a little bit and then it goes up. And now we're at a higher rate. Our officers have written more citations in 2025 than any other year in the last decade. So officers are getting out there, they're motivated. We have a great team and they're doing great work, but we have written more citations this year than in any other year.
That's the impression I got from the data, and I want to commend you and your division for that work. It's a lot of work.
I appreciate that, Commissioner. Thank you.
Commissioner Witt, thank you. I also would like to commend you. I know so many hunters that are so pleased to see more officers out in the field. So I know, it can be very dangerous, and we appreciate you people and your group. It was so much. Thank you guys for all your hard work.
And Chair and Commissioners, I will point out, just starting the other day, we did start 4 brand new officers that are starting their career with us. They'll be headed off to the academy shortly. So hope to see them about November of next year hitting the ground.
Great. Keep up the good work. Anybody else? Greg? Okay. Thank you for that presentation.
I'm good.
Okay, item number 12. Actually, the next 4 items are initiating the rulemaking process on a number of species. These initial discussions are the first of at least 3 times, including the hearing, that will be heard. It is important for the public and the commission to comment early in the process so we can develop the best rules possible. I'll say that again. It is important for the public and the commission to comment early in the process so we can develop the best rules possible. On that note, Chief Liley was going to give us the initial discussion of the Javelina rule. Chief Liley.
Good morning, commissioners, members of the public. As you kind of stated, this is a pretty big year for the commission in terms of big game rulemaking. Some of you were on the commission prior, the previous 4 years when we did this, but it's a pretty intense year of trying to go through all the big game rules, go through the discussions of all the different potential changes that either the department recommends, comments from the public, and recommendations from you all, recommendations from the public, and trying to engage early. We kind of last rule cycle, we try to come forth with the department's initial recommendations right away from the start of the rulemaking so people have an idea of what we're proposing, so they have more time to formulate public comments, either for, against, or comments in a different direction, or comments that help us to make a better rule. These aren't fully fleshed out from the department, obviously, when we first come up with the initial proposed ideas. Some of it is still in data analysis mode, so we're still looking at, we just finished the third season of the 4-year rule cycle, so we haven't even gotten harvest reports in totality for some of that, so we're going to have some data analysis. By April, we kind of get that all done, and we're still flying surveys, but the point of the matter is it's a pretty intense data analysis to get to some of the license recommendations, et cetera. Some of the bigger conceptual ideas we'll put forth to you all early on, and then we'll kind of move through the process. We are starting to have some of our meetings with groups that have shown interest that want to have meetings. We'll continue to do that, some one-on-one meetings. We'll invite other individuals, and we ask members or if there's organizations that would like to kind of sit down with the department and hash out and go through the recommendations in more depth and detail than can be had at a commission meeting. We welcome that. Get in touch with myself or anyone within our section to go through some of those changes. So kind of jumping straight into it, I'm going to go into Javelina. We're opening 4 rules today, Javelina being one of them. Just a little bit of background on Javelina. Historically, the core of the population of Javelina has been centered in the Southwest in that kind of boot hill. We have seen expansion through time of Javelina across the state, especially to the east and also to the north. As far north as we have Javelina almost on an annual basis reports in the Santa Fe County. Not necessarily probably residents, but we see them push up during warm months and maybe retract during the cooler months. But we are seeing definite expansion of Javelina across the state. Again, like I said, especially in the east along the Texas border, northern all the way Capitan, that area where we're starting to see actual resident populations. Really, with Javelina, we might get them cursory to secondary surveys like for desert bighorn sheep or mule deer in the desert, but really the best way to kind of monitor trends that we found is through our mandatory hunter harvest. We could kind of track the trends in harvest, and it correlates fairly well with population size, just at success rates, et cetera. When we see, quote unquote a metric that we look at, catch per unit effort. So we ask how many days you hunted, were you successful? It gets us kind of an idea when you're looking across long-term periods. It doesn't get as great as your annual variations, but a longer term trend it kind of gets us. Real quick, just showing the 2024 harvest data. Again, we'll be analyzing 2025. Those harvest reports aren't due until February 15th, mandatory harvest reports. And then we see a big uptick in harvest reporting as people are applying. Either they get reminded, hey, you haven't submitted your harvest report, et cetera. And so that's when we get a lot of those. We'll get more data as we get that for the 2025. But you'll see they're selling about 3,000 Javelina licenses statewide. Success rates between the Boot Hill, kind of the core region again, and the rest of the state is pretty similar in our success rates. And are pretty well parity in our harvest, a little bit more male than female, and satisfaction ratings you'll see right there. Just real quick on a trend in applications, and this was kind of something we saw more at the last rule cycle. This is kind of going back to almost Commissioner Witt's comment on that COVID bump in license sales, interest in hunting in general. And you see that in 2020 to 2021. Our 2021, we saw a big jump in the applicants, and then it's stabilized more or less in the number of applicants in Javelina. We didn't know if that trend would stay or not. But just to kind of show that we did see that jump in 2020 to 21, and it's kind of more or less flattened since that time. Probably see more of a flattening trend in time. In terms of licenses and harvest, we did at the last rule cycle. So you'll see 23 was the start of the last rule cycle. So 23 season, 24, we're in the getting ready to finish the 25 season. As you know, the season runs from April 1st to March 31st. So we still have a little bit of time left in the 25-26 season. We'll get some data there, but we did increase license sales over the last rule cycle. A lot of that was in our over-the-counter with caps in the rest of the outside of the Boot Hill region. We've been pretty steady in the Boot Hill region, but we did increase those over the counter with caps outside of the Boot Hill region. Harvest is maintained fairly steady through time. It's hard on this graph because the license sales differential kind of masks some of that change in the lower part of that graph. So kind of looking more at success rates and the success rates across weapon type. You'll see they've been fairly consistent. Statewide, you're seeing on the archery, it's interesting, statewide archery, you saw a pretty decent increase over this rule cycle from the previous. You had a bump in 2018, but overall, fairly consistent success rates across time. We are starting to see an increase in the success rates on that rifle hunt in our core units. And whether that continues through in the 25 season or not, we'll see. In general, what we're looking at for proposals from the department is increasing those over-the-counter license caps as well. Like I said, we're seeing an increase in Javelina outside of our core areas in new places. In fact, we're not saying that this will be a tool to help us with depredation issues, but we are seeing more nuisance issues with Javelina, especially in towns, Truth or Consequences, Capitan, Cloudcroft, Silver City, those kind of areas where we're getting more calls. We're seeing an uptick. Again, I don't think we're going to see this hunting be a resolution to it, but it's just kind of incidental new areas becoming depredation areas where we're seeing Javelina start to concentrate. The one thing that we do for like Barbary sheep, for example, but we haven't done for Javelina is those individuals that draw those core units. When I say the Boot Hill or core units, that's 19, 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27. If you have that draw hunt, you're restricted to just that area. You can't hunt anywhere else. What we're proposing during this rule cycle would be to allow those individuals that draw that hunt to be able to hunt that core area and anywhere else in the state if they so choose to. So it wouldn't focus just in that area. It allows them to hunt the rest, would allow them to hunt the rest of the state. Again, in terms of actual license numbers that we're looking at for the over-the-counter areas, we don't know. We're looking at the data still. We'll analyze that. By the next time you hear this presentation, we will have firmed up license numbers for the recommendations. I should also note for all these rules, once we get through the initial, you're going to see a summary of proposed changes on our website, and that's updated very frequently. When we get to a point where we know what our proposed license changes is, we'll update that online. That might be before even a commission meeting happens, but we are continually updating that. So I guess for members of the public, just to kind of always follow the commission tab under proposals under consideration, read those summaries, because we do adjust that based off of public comment, based off of commission direction, and also based upon any new data analysis that we've done. Those may be updated up to 10 times for a certain rule, 4 or 5 times for other rules. So it's important to kind of watch that. Once we get to that kind of right before the hearing, we come to you all with our final recommendations. And that's what it is. At that time, the commission kind of has that ability to say, yes, you're on the right track, or no, go do this, do something else. Then we publish in the register. By the time we publish in the register, it really is kind of adopt or not adopt. It's not, it really would take going back out. So again, it's important for early engagement. We're happy to engage with individuals that have questions as well. And real quick on public outreach too, we will host multiple public meetings throughout the state, and also all of the meetings are hybrid now. So it gives the opportunity for individuals that can't necessarily go to a place to go hybrid on them. It might be multiple species or rules that we cover in one of these public meetings, but it is another opportunity for individuals to hear what our proposals are and give comments to that. We do a dedicated comment email address for every single one of these rules. It will again be under the summary of proposed changes on the commission and the website under the commission tab. You'll see that they have their own unique email address, so we could track comments specific to each one of these rules. And so with that, I would stand for any questions you all may have on the Javelina rule.
Commissioners? Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, first I wanted to ask a clarification because I just about the sex, because I didn't know that hunters had to report the sex on javelinas. You have good data on the sex breakdown. So where do you get that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Witt, we do ask that question, was it a male or a female that you harvested during the harvest reporting? It is not a requirement to like determine the sex prior to harvest, but we're wanting to know what that was at the time of harvest so we could kind of track the trend in male-female harvest.
Okay, that makes sense. So I guess what I wanted to ask is, like, for javelinas, there's this kind of complicated dichotomy between the draw hunts and the statewide, and you have the species expanding. So you would think this is probably something that needs to be looked at and maybe updated. And I was surprised, particularly, that your data shows that the harvest success rates are really similar for the statewide versus the draw hunts. So do you think we need to look closely at potentially shifting the GMUs that are subject to the draw versus the statewide?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Witt, I think a javelina is an interesting species. In some ways, you probably could go almost over the counter on some of it, just because the way the biology of them is as you get more hunters on the ground, success rates are going to drop. They probably are going to be a little bit more, less susceptible to harvest population reductions because they have large litters, et cetera. I think part of the draw hunts has just been a function of people wanting to make sure there wasn't crowding within those units. And the over the counter is not as much. It's a bigger dispersed area. And it was really, they came about when we took advantage of new populations setting up. We really didn't have a ability to say like, oh, let's determine license numbers for GMU 30, for example, in the Guadalupe Mountains. It maybe is a time if there's more of a desire to have a strict draw, like to create new draw areas, right? I think that would be the potential, is if we want to go into new draw areas rather than saying like, let's maybe stay with our core where historically range of javelina was in that boot hill. We've always drawn there. Do we now create new draw areas in Guadalupe's or somewhere else, and then do a different over-the-counter area where it's very sporadic? Like, I think we don't want to have a draw hunt in an area where there's very few javelina and create an expectation that, especially for someone that doesn't know the state, doesn't know the density, that, you might be able to get a javelina in Santa Fe County, but the reality of finding that, we don't want to put a person at 10 draw hunters and then have the ability to not. So I think that there is the chance to look at should we create new draw areas or units? But overall, I think that's why we've kind of stuck with that over the counter the rest of the outside the core.
Commissioner Clemente?
So the core area is the boot hill,
That is correct.
and that goes from, I'm assuming, I-10 south.
Chair, Commissioner Clemente, it also goes to the north a little bit. It's 23, 24 as well. So up to Silver City, basically, up to the boroughs, more or less that southwest quadrant of the state, south of the Gila kind of wilderness more. And the Gila would be included in it because 24 is a GMU in there and 23. But
So pretty much your that is draw hunts only, correct? So, okay, thank you.
So do you attribute the expansion up north to warmer environmental conditions? Or is this just based on big numbers moving?
Mr. Chair, I think definitely some of that, right? And so I think especially what we see is some of these javelina come up in the summer time, especially to the north. When we get cold snaps long enough, I think we see them retreat set. And so if you have consistent warm winters, you're going to see more expansion of javelina. I also think you just had expansion out of Texas too, coming up out of kind of West Texas, coming up through there that we just didn't have historically. I don't think we had a lot of javelina moving from western New Mexico east. I think we had javelina moving from Texas north, if that makes sense. The Guadalupe Mountains, etc., expanding through there. We definitely see javelina more common in like even the Gila National Forest, moving further north, that area. But we probably get retractions if you have colder, long winters. When we're not having snow or cold, I think we see expansion.
Thank you, Chief Lively. Is there anyone for the public or online that wants to comment on javelina? Okay. Thank you, Chief. Item number 13 is the initial discussion of the turkey rule 19.31.16 NMAC. Chief Lively.
Okay, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, again, as you mentioned, this is the turkey rule initiation of that. Just a quick little background. New Mexico does have 3 subspecies of turkeys, which is kind of unique from not very many states have 2 subspecies, let alone a state having 3 subspecies. You'll see kind of that green area too. That's where we get some hybridization between Easterns and, Rio Grandes and Merriam's. You could see the majority of the state is Merriam's turkeys. That's that kind of yellowish orange color. Gould's turkeys down in the Boot Hill as the blue. And then you have your main Rio Grandes kind of running that purple, and along our river kind of drainages is what you'll see. And then along Tucumcari, that area is where we also see more of our Rio Grandes. But of course, along the Rio Grande corridor and the Pecos corridor is our main Rio Grande populations. Just a little bit of biology. A lot of the turkey populations trend with environmental conditions. Hunter harvest can be additive, but hunter harvest is mainly additive probably when it's hens in the fall. Those are a lot of times, especially if it's adult hens in the fall coming into the winter, pretty decent survival rates. But if you have high hen harvest in the fall, it can have the potential to impact populations. Overall, male harvest in the spring or in the fall has less of an impact on the population, and also, multiple males can breed females. The other thing that's important and being looked at more across the country is timing of harvest in the spring to make sure that we're not killing males before insemination of females, to make sure that they could still lay eggs and incubate eggs, and that the timing of that is important. And so part of, the department historically has relied upon this 1980s kind of gobbling study. That's in your lower right-hand corner, looking at what we thought was hen nest initiation. And the thought was, and that came from the 80s, really that peak egg laying was occurring in mid-April, but the onset of incubation really was kind of in that mid-May. What you'll see in that left-hand graph, we just recently have started a kind of large-scale turkey study where we're putting GPS backpacks on females to kind of get a GPS satellite transmitters, where we could actually now tell when they're doing incubating nests, and we'll know when nest incubation starts, gives us an idea when egg initiation laying starts as well. And what you'll see there is the peak that we found this last year, really running from about May 16th to the 25th or excuse me, from the 8th to the 28th, which is consistent with the previous study that was from about the 16th to the 25th. Again, that's 1 year study of about 42 hens, but we're going to do this for multiple years. But the good part from that is it looks like our peak of incubation has remained the same. So our season dates, I think this goes into the importance of our season dates starting about April 15th is probably well past the peak of when insemination, fertilization of the egg starts. So we're not killing males before fertilization occurs, and that it gives the ability for those hens to lay the eggs, incubate, and not have an impact on that. There's been some discussions in previous rules of trying to move the season earlier to capture some of the early gobbing. We've been kind of a little bit resistant to that based upon the old studies on when peak initiation starts. So that's why we wanted to really look at that. I think right now we're still going to say that April 15th is appropriate. Some states are actually finding that and mainly to the east, not in the Rocky Mountains, not necessarily on Merriam's, mainly on eastern turkeys, that peak incubation period is getting later in the season. So they're moving their season dates a week later. Again, we're not really seeing that from the data that we have right now. So we're not proposing any changes to the seasons. We think they're a pretty good structure on that, given some of this in early data. I see it's a little bit hard for the public on the screen right in front of me. Maybe on the right, you could see this a little bit better. This is a spring license sales. So looking at the differentiation between resident and non-resident license sales. Spring and fall licenses are over the counter for both residents and non-residents. The average non-resident license sales over the last 4 years was about 1,900 licenses, 1,940. Resident license sales were 9,482. So definitely a lot more resident license over the counter sales. And then fall is even more resident than non-resident. Average over the last 4 years in the fall for residents is 4,464, non-residents 211. So kind of just looking at harvest through time, and this is going back a long time, back to the 1960s. So this is, we've got to also understand there's some biases inherent in there because of how we collected harvest information through time has changed from voluntary, like call a hunter, to voluntary mail-ins, to where we went mandatory in more recent years. We went to mandatory turkey harvest reporting in 2013. So the last 10 years or so, we have a lot more confidence in the data. But what you'll see, obviously, when we are trying to rebuild turkey populations back into the state, our number of hunters or licenses and harvest started to increase as the populations have increased. There's noise around that early 2000s. That's when we were shifting from kind of card voluntary tear off to figuring out when we would go into mandatory. 2006 is when we did mandatory big game, and we saw an uptick in our reporting rates for turkey at that time. People would report their big game and their turkey at the same time. And then again, 2013 is when we shifted to mandatory harvest. I guess the point of that being is our harvest, if you look at that kind of 2000-ish, 2010 on, has been fairly stable. A little bit of fluctuations in there, but overall more stable. I'll get into a little bit more clearer graphics in time. But this is also, I'm not expecting anyone to go through each individual of this. What this is really looking at is the success rate has really not changed much in the last 10 years. We're looking at about 20 to 25% success rate. Some years we bump up almost to 30%. This is also overall success rate. Like if you harvested one bird, that's that first column, just saying if here the number of spring harvest, that's the actual harvest estimate, and then the success rate. And then the next column is the second turkey. So you'll see column 3 is how many second turkeys are harvested on an annual basis. And that column there that says second turkey success, that's the percent of the hunters that actually harvested a first bird that went in and harvested a second bird. So you're looking at, about 20 to 27% of hunters that harvest a first bird also kill a second bird. So the majority, I think the point is the majority of the people are not harvesting 2 birds. Less than, 70% of our hunters actually harvest a 2 bird on the 2 bird bag limit in the spring. And then looking over on the break, that's looking at our fall harvest. Our fall harvest is much lower, as you can see, and fluctuates a little bit more than the other. And then the other point being there, that third column in that fall harvest is our hen harvest. So we're taking a close look at that hen harvest. We don't have a recommendation to, again, as I mentioned earlier, hen harvest is probably the one that can affect or impact populations more than anything. We're looking to see if we should be limiting hen harvest in areas or limiting hen harvest at all. It's pretty low. That's a statewide. We're taking kind of a deeper look right now to say, is that proportional across the state, or are there areas within the state where it's higher density hen harvest than others? And if so, we might come back with a male bearded only or bearded turkey only recommendation for fall in some of these. But right now we're just kind of in the early data phase of it. Not an official recommendation right now, but something that we're looking into to see if that fall hen harvest is still sustainable. So looking at this is going back to the spring season. This is looking at our reported numbers between residents, non-residents, again on that first, and then success rates between non-residents and residents. On those 2 right graphs, those are split out. You'll see there non-residents have a significantly higher success rate than residents. Resident success rate, varies right around that 20 to 30%, whereas resident, you're looking all the way up to, almost 50, high of 55 at one point in time, but between 40 to 50% on that. Again, I think the important thing on this, we've heard comments about we really need to not have a 2 bird bag limit. We're looking at, in terms of success at getting the second turkey, about on average, 22% of residents harvest a second turkey. So, 78% of people that have a license are not harvesting a second on residents. And then non-residents, it's 36%. So we do see a little bit higher, but not the proportional higher like difference between first bird success rates. And then in terms of the proportion of harvest, so we look at that too, the proportion of the second turkey bag limit, 26% of that is non-residents and 74% of that is residents. So even though non-residents have a higher success rate, because license sales are skewed more towards residents have a much larger proportion of that second bird harvest. So 75% roughly compared to 25%. Just want to go through some of the research that we've done kind of during the last rule cycle and ongoing. I mentioned briefly about these GPS marking hens across New Mexico. We're going to continue that during this rule cycle. We marked 42 hens last year. We're hoping to, get up into the hundreds to, multiple hundreds, 300 type turkeys through the next 4 years, really looking at reproduction, not only initiation of incubation, but also all the way to brood success. We could actually tell from the GPS backpacks if they failed or not, if they walk away from the nest, if we saw incubation, and then you could kind of start seeing some movements where they have pulse, where it's not movements as much versus a wide ranging. We could speculate it was a failed nest type of a thing. And then there's this kind of bigger national turkey brood survey that National Wild Turkey Federation's kind of putting on across the nation that we're participating in, as well as volunteers through the state, kind of more of a citizen science to kind of get brood counts in July, August, see what we're getting at. So we're participating in that, and I'll be documenting those turkeys again in July, August to get more brood survival, brood success. And then one of the bigger ones that we have done through time, and this was part of Gould's delisting. We delisted Gould's turkey 4 years ago. And this was really, these are GPS backpacks on Gould's. We've had hundreds of GPS backpacks on there. We're continuing to monitor. It really helps us to be able to get at population size because these GPS backpacks have really changed our thought process on what is roost habitat. We really used to do roost surveys in the modern pine kind of type habitat type. We're finding that there's a lot of other roost sites, and when we get these GPS backpacks, we could go straight into them, and we're able to get better estimates of population size, at least minimum counts on there. I think one of the other thing that's really interesting in this, if you look at these kind of that lower graphic, the lower two, we're seeing international movement of these turkeys, and we're seeing some of these turkeys set up into in Mexico, including crossing Highway 2. If you all are familiar with Highway 2 in Mexico, it's a major interstate, if you will, across running east-west across Mexico, and we're seeing movements way far south of Highway 2, which is good. And we're also seeing movements into the Animas Mountains as well. This GPS data has actually allowed us to work cooperatively with a landowner in Mexico that has a lot of interest in Gould's turkey conservation restoration. They're going to start actually marking birds in Mexico with GPS collars too, so we could see if we have movements back north as well too. So again, just kind of looking at these GPS backpacks have given us everything from helps with population counts, brood success, but really also movement and habitat use has been very helpful for Gould's. Some of our proposed changes for turkey is really, I kind of mentioned we're looking at that fall. The one we're really looking at is fall hen harvest. We're not proposing any changes at this time. We'll come back to you at the next meeting if we do have any proposed changes. But the ones that we just adjust calendar dates based on, or excuse me, hunt dates based on the calendar shift where you have a Saturday start or whatnot on our draw hunts. And then we're also proposing increasing our once-in-a-lifetime Gould's tags. That's the GMU 2627. Right now, it's up to 5. We make a determination on an annual basis, kind of like we do bighorn sheep, but we're going to propose up to 15. Doesn't mean we're going to hit 15. I think it's important to recognize that just because it's an up to, we won't hit 15 during this rule cycle. But if we have a good year, we have the potential to really get into more. Looking at this, we try to harvest about 10% of our, or not harvest, but offer about 10% of our male population, 10% of the licenses of our known male population. What you'll see in that colors is a little bit hard on the middle screen, but maybe on the other, our males in there, running anywhere from 5 to 50 to almost 100 at one point in time. We did have a dip this year. This year was bad drought down there. You'll see that even the total was bad, but turkeys do rebound pretty quick. You'll see that kind of dip in 2022 drought back to a good monsoon season. It hit and we had a pretty big increase. Hopefully, if we get some winter moisture down there this year, some decent monsoons, we could get there. So I guess the point of that being is there is a chance to get up to the closer to the 15. We'll continue monitoring with our GPS collars. And a lot of that unknowns, there's going to be a proportion of that is males too. So again, that's minimum males in there. It's not known males. There's a fair amount of unknowns. If we get that better classified, it might get there. But we're about 10% of our known male is what we offer for licenses on kind of an annual basis. And with that, I'd take any questions.
Commissioners?
On the data that you presented, on the harvest data, it's all 3 subspecies into one data?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Clemente, that's correct, except for Gould's. We kind of exclude Gould's a little bit because it's such a small number. It's, less than 5, but that would be all the 3 subspecies, or excuse me, 2 subspecies of Rios and Merriams.
And Merriams, okay. I would like to see if it's possible. I don't know if you can divide it, separate the data. That would be very interesting to see the subspecies, how they're.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Clemente, so the harvest report question asked, because your license is valid across the state, it asks if you harvest or not and the GMU. So we could kind of get at it by the GMU, but we do have some Merriams, Rios, and hybrids in some GMUs. So we don't specifically ask like 100, did you harvest a Rio Grande or a Merriams? And we even get some people thinking that they're harvesting Easterns. And so we could kind of look at it by the harvest by GMU, especially along the Rio Grande corridor where we don't have Merriams. I think that'd be the easier to look at, like, what's our Rio Grande harvest? And also on the Pecos too. We'd still get some Merriams in there, but the majority of our harvest is Merriams overall. But we could look at that from try to get at not an exact split, but an estimate of what's more Rio Grande harvest than Merriams.
Okay. And if you go to the slide of the where you have the harvest report, the percentage, and then you have the second harvest, the second bird, the percentage of the second bird. I think it was right. There you go.
This table right here.
So on the second turkey success, it's 20% of total hunters or 20% of the hunters that actually harvested that 26% and went back and harvested the second turkey.
It's 26% of the people that harvested one bird.
20% of the 26%.
So for example, right. So it's a much smaller. So you have like an initial spring harvest at let's just use the number 26% of people saying I killed at least one bird.
Right.
And then you have 26% of those people killing a second bird.
And the reason why I'm asking, because that is a lot smaller number.
Correct.
Than if you put it
For
at
sure.
that
Yeah.
total.
Yes.
Okay. Just for clarification. And then I'm glad to hear that because I had worked on the Boot Hill with private properties, and I seen the turkey population we monitor actually rooster on private properties. And we kept seeing increase on population increase. And I'm happy to see that actually you guys might propose increase the tax for the ghost turkey. I think that would be a good move. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Clemente. Commissioner Witt?
Yeah, just a couple quick questions. That was a great presentation. I wanted to know specifically about the Gould's turkey a little bit more. Why is the spring season shifted later than for the other subspecies? Starts May 1st.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Witt, yeah, good question. I didn't mention that. I apologize. That came from our GPS stuff, looking at when peak initiation and nest was, or incubation, and it is later. It's almost 10 to 15 days later than our Merriams. And so that's why our season's later, is we're trying to make sure that we get insemination taking, that we're not killing those males prior to that. And so they are later by almost a week to 10 days on our nest initiation.
That's fascinating. A little counterintuitive. Maybe it's shifted to take advantage of monsoon rains in the summer or something like that.
It's hard to say, Mr. Chair, Commissioner. Yeah, it's really hard to say. Our turkey biologist might have a little bit better, but I don't think there's been tons of work on Gould's turkey's GPS collar work. It's kind of some of the first where we really get hard data on nest initiation. Arizona's done a little bit, not a lot in Mexico on the GPS backpacks. I think it'll be interesting as we continue to see if we get, Merriam's is probably tighter than that. Like, we've been doing this for about 7 years now. Like, will we build a database where if that's a lot of interannual variation, or if it's consistent through time, it'll just be interesting.
Yeah, I also think the international connectivity is fascinating. Do you know, is there any kind of seasonality to those movements? Or are they kind of stochastic dispersal?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, yeah, I don't know what the temporal scale on that is. I definitely could ask our turkey biologist if that was more just quick stochastic events, or if it's, is it for roosting? I know we have had birds that have actually gone down there and stayed and not returned as well too. So I don't know if that's a dispersal event, and it very well could be dispersal events of younger birds that they caught, but I don't have.
One last question. What you talked about concern about potential over harvesting in fall of hens as being potentially problematic. How are you going to, going forward, how are you going to assess that across New Mexico?
So, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Witt, I think the biggest thing is what you saw up there was statewide numbers. And so we want to look to see, are we having areas where we're seeing higher hen harvest than others? If there's GMUs, because we do ask that question in the harvest report, what GMU did you harvest it? And so if we see, like, for example, high harvest in an area where we know densities aren't as high, that might be where we're going to look at that. Whereas if it's kind of proportionally spread, known kind of our known densities of turkeys across the state. If it's hen harvest is less in those areas, we're not as concerned. So it's really trying to look at more proportionality, like what is that hen harvest overrepresented in some of these areas, underrepresented, or about the same. And so if it's pretty widespread and not a concern, I don't think we'll come with that proposal. But if it's very pointed in certain areas, we might say certain GMUs that we recommend going to a bearded turkey only in the fall. But that's kind of the approach that we're looking at right now.
Okay, that sounds good. I mean, it should be correlated. The numbers should be correlated with the spring success rates because they're both tracking density. If they were out of whack or somehow, negatively correlated, that would be a big concern.
Right, exactly.
You're going to have that data possibly next meeting?
Mr. Chair, yes, we would bring that back next year. If we're going to recommend, if we see something, we'll definitely, like Commissioner Witt said, if that's not correlated, if we see some definitely heavier pressure in some areas, we'll bring that back. But we're in that analysis phase right now, and we'll be at the next time we come.
Great. That was a great presentation, Stuart. Thank you. Anybody else have anything?
Just one question. Has the department that on relocating ghost turkey to other areas in the state?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Clemente, historically, they would have only been in kind of that Sky Island along the Arizona-New Mexico border. I think habitat-wise, we've discussed, like, were they historically present in hatchets? That would probably be the only mountain that we would think about that they maybe were in there. I think if we get a population a lot higher and we have excess birds, I don't think we have tons of excess birds right now to move, but hatchets would be one that we would maybe attempt kind of at the peak of the Hatchet Mountains as it kind of gets better habitat in there. We do see them in the Animas Mountains running up the Animas, so there is some connectivity. It's almost a U shape. As you know, that mountain range has the valley in the middle, but you have continuous habitat down into Mexico coming back into the United States. And if you actually look at this graphic, let's see, it would be, yeah, the bottom graphic, you almost could kind of see that connectivity coming back, that habitat range coming back, moving south. If you go southwest, south into Mexico, and then the mountain range is going to the northeast into Mexico, back into New Mexico. That's probably where our connectivity is. Hatchet Mountain Range is going to be, kind of over in this area. And so that would probably be the only, let's see if it's maybe not showing up when I do that. Yeah, it's not. It would basically in that northeast portion of that bottom graphic. That would be the one place where we would potentially look again to start a population. It takes quite a few birds, and I don't think this current population in New Mexico could withstand it. Potentially cooperation with Mexico for additional birds, but that would be the one we would look at.
I think I can make that connection with Mexico to get birds.
Oh, thank you, Stuart. Anyone online now? Okay, is everybody good? Do we need to take a break real quick or? Let's take a 10-minute break. Thank you, everybody. Let's move on to agenda item 14, which is the initial discussion of migratory bird rule 19.316 NMAC. Stuart.
Yeah, commissioners, this is an annual rule, as you all know, so we hear this every single year. We work in conjunction with the Fish and Wildlife Service and their frameworks that are allowed. We work through the flyways. Fish and Wildlife Service actually has not published the preliminary frameworks yet. Normally they're published by now. They're delayed in publishing the preliminary, but we've been working through the Fish and Wildlife Service, more or less, probably going to have frameworks that are unchanged from last year. And so 3 bird pintail bag limit again. But again, once the proposed frameworks are published, we'll make sure that our rules are developed within that. We're not expecting any changes in the overarching season length and or bag limits for any species from a change from the 25 to the 26 season. We will potentially we'll go back out to public comment like we always do, make sure that people are happy with the way we set our seasons. We only get so many exposure days, so we set In the north and the central flyway, we start the season earlier, end a little bit before the last potential day. So January 31st is the last day we could harvest ducks, period. We try to move the north to start a little bit sooner. If we have a cooler fall, we get freeze out and those birds move south. But this fall, we definitely did not have that freeze out conditions. As you kind of know, December was in the 60s, so we didn't have freeze out to the north. Migratory birds are still even holed up further north. We didn't get the big migrations in. So, but sandhill crane is the one that we probably adjust, and that's the Rocky Mountain population of sandhill cranes. We adjust the most. We are allocated a certain harvest limit that we cannot exceed. That's based on surveys that will be held in the spring. So we won't know that allocation until about April or so. If we get a increased allocation, we'll see if we increase our draw permits. We're hovering right at a point where we might be kind of max, even if we get an increased allocation, just the hunter density in the middle Rio Grande, putting more hunters out there just creates kind of a challenging hunt for some of those areas, just not tons of areas to hunt. But it might be a place where we could look at the southwest. That's a draw area too for Rocky Mountain population of cranes that we could potentially increase. We'll hold our public meetings in February or March, hybrid as well. So right now we're looking at, this is kind of a staying to the course of our typical proposed hunt dates. That's for the central flyway. As you can see, like I said, the north zone, we start a little bit sooner and a little bit earlier because of the potential freeze out conditions. South zone, we run all the way to the latest that we can because we don't have those freeze out conditions as much. And then Pacific Flyway, there's a longer exposure, longer allowable exposure dates. So we are starting those south and north zones a little bit earlier. SCOP, it does have a shorter season just because that's the regulatory frameworks that we work within. SCOPs do not have the full exposure days that we can with other birds. And then you'll see a geese season. And so with that, I would take any questions. Again, this is an annual rule that we do every year in concert with Fish and Wildlife Service. I would say one thing that we will look at maybe as we move into the future, South Dakota and Nebraska started what they called an experimental two-tier season. Two-tier being that they created this process to try to recruit more duck hunters, reactivate to kind of the 3 Rs, but really where it is, instead of having bag limits by certain species, by hens versus males, it was a 3-bird bag limit period. And just trying to get people in. Some of they found some of the survey data showed that entrance into migratory bird hunting, kind of some of the walls there was bird identification and hunters being really nervous about killing the wrong bird or overgoing in the bag of a certain species. And so they started this just a kind of a 3-bird, kill whatever you want, but you're done. So, you know, a lot of the rest of our bag limits are 6 with no more than like 3 pintails or no more than 1 canvasback. And so they're finding the data that was experimental. The service let them go into experimental status for about 5 years. They're coming out of the experiment right now and showing success at getting more hunters involved in migratory bird. And you're actually seeing some of those early on 2-tier hunters graduating into the not selecting 2-tier anymore. They started bird recognition and they're moving into. And so the service is contemplating allowing that for other states in the coming future, whether that's 27, 28, what it is. But I think it's something that would be valuable to assess if New Mexico wanted to go into this potential 2-tier. I think there's value in that and value in trying to get more people involved in migratory bird hunting. It's one of the largest declining hunting sectors that's been there. And so I think this is a way to make it less, but we'll keep the commission posted on that when the service will allow for that to maybe go operational across the country or if they'll let it go operational. But we do continue to push with the flyways and the service to have more states be able to potentially go operational with that.
Are those tiers seasonal, different seasons?
Mr. Chair, it's the same exact season, so you have to hunt the same season dates. It's just they call it, the service decided to call it a tier in terms of the tier of the hunter. Like the hunter, you go with the normal bag limits or a reduced tiered bag limit is basically why they call it 2-tier. It really is just you're going to an overall reduced bag limit on birds on a daily bag limit.
By choice.
By choice.
Yeah. Commissioners, anything?
Well, I just wanted to comment with respect to SCOP. I don't know any New Mexico duck hunters that I know that I would trust to identify a SCOP from a ringneck duck or other similar. It's a little concerning to have their season slightly offset from other species.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Witt, that's a federal rule that we have to follow. I agree. The amount of wing, so we do participate in wing return. The amount of SCOP in New Mexico is pretty low, and they look at harvest dates on that. So there's a lot of times when those individuals that get mailing cards or envelopes to return their wings, they ask the hunter to say what they think the wing is, and there definitely are times where it's off, but for the most part, and SCOP is just a low harvested bird in New Mexico for the most part.
Thank you, Stuart. Moving on to item number 15, the initial discussion of the Barbary sheep, Oryx, and Persian Ibex rule 19.31.1 NMAC.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, it looks like this presentation is having issues loading. We'll see if it's just taking a second. Maybe try to load it from a thumb drive. Okay. So as stated, this rule consists of 3 different species: Ibex, Barbary sheep, and Oryx. I'll go through each one of those separately and kind of our proposals, background data, etc. Starting with Ibex. So little bit history on Ibex. We've seen huge population fluctuations in time since the 80s on Ibex, all the way up to probably well over 1,200 Ibex to 1,500 Ibex on the mountain, down to lows in the 80 type numbers in recent history. And we're really been trying to get at stopping these population swings. There's 2 management strategies with Ibex. One is to keep Ibex on the Florida mountains. That's kind of an agreement we have with the BLM, and also to protect desert bighorn sheep. And so Ibex do carry Mycoplasma ova pneumoniae. Mycoplasma ova pneumoniae is kind of thought to be the leading cause of basically secondary pathogens like pneumonia entering desert bighorn sheep, Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep, and basically killing off populations. Ibex can carry it and not show impacts, or they don't have a survival or show secondary pneumonia, whereas once our bighorn get it, we see die-offs of up to 90%. So our strategy is to keep Ibex on the mountain and prevent expansion. The other thing is we've worked with the BLM through time to try to establish a population goal, if you will, on there, and that's really between 350 and 700 Ibex. So we're still trying to build Ibex back to that goal, but we're trying to maintain that we don't overshoot that goal. So it's a balance of trying to, because they do twin, is trying to make sure that we control it so it doesn't go so fast. And we'll get into some of the data, and we've had these huge pendulums, and we're trying to move away from that. In terms of the last rule cycle, we're averaging about 300 licenses sold, success rates all the way from 0 to 50%, depending on the license type. We're really not harvesting very many. This was last year's harvest, 2024 harvest. You'll see we harvested 10 males and 1 female across the whole mountain during last year's hunt. Satisfaction ratings are dropping. We recognize the population's down. We were hoping in the last 4-year rule cycle. We've harvested in the last 2 years. This is 2 years because our female harvest happens right now, but really 2 females in the last couple years. So female harvest isn't driving the slowed, protracted increase of Ibex on that mountain. Something else is. What that is exactly, we don't know, but we're trying to still build back that Ibex population. The other thing that's really important is we've historically flown helicopter surveys on the Florida mountains that picture in the right, that graphic in the right is kind of a survey route from a helicopter survey. What we do is start at the bottom of the mountain and work our way up. I think through time, especially when populations were high, those were very successful. You catch Ibex movement. They're very fast on the mountain, climb cliffs as fast as a helicopter almost can climb a cliff, to be honest with you. And when the population was high, we were seeing group sizes, in the hundreds of animals, and all you need to do was catch movement from a helicopter. The observers of 1 or 2 Ibex, and all of a sudden you find 200 or a group of 50. Our group sizes moved to about 5. And so trying to catch those individual groups has been a lot harder. I think our detection rates are a lot less, and our surveys are just not working out real well. We're in the less than 100 in the surveys. So 2 years ago in 2024, we contracted a company named Awahi Air that has a forward-looking infrared and also a high digital forward-looking camera too that could toggle between infrared and real-time camera. They could fly at about 1,000 feet at AGL, so they're well above 1,000 to 1,500 feet AGL in a fixed-wing aircraft, and you can get a much better survey. You're detecting those small groups much better. Hopefully this video will play next slide. You'll be able to see some clips from that survey, but that survey we did a conjunction flight. These 2 flights were done a week apart. Our helicopter saw about 80. The Awahi Air detected 198. So we were way under our detections. And if this video will play, that'd be great. If not, I do have some kind of slide clips we'll see. And I was afraid of that. That's what's holding up on this computer is the video. Well, you can't see it. It's corrupted on this computer. So anyway, it's not going to play. I'll try to get it to play maybe at a break on a different, I have it on a flash drive, but what we're looking at, and I'll go through the next slides. So you could see it on the right graphic. You could see this is a group that the camera picks up. So you can see the kind of 2 Ibex that are circled in red right there. You could, as it kind of zooms in, so again, it toggles. So the plane is flying a fixed line on it until they find Ibex. And then the camera toggles back and forth to where you could even get classification. So those 2 Ibex are the actual 2 Ibex that the heat signatures were. So I'll toggle back and forth from the 2. So you could see the 1 heat signature, and then you could actually toggle 2 to actually classify what that Ibex was. And I'll go through it. Unfortunately, the video is about 2 minutes of a full survey. You could kind of even get at we're able to classify age of males even from this, which is very hard in the helicopter because they're moving so fast. Whereas in this, they're not even, they don't even recognize the plane is there. And the video really shows that they just go about feeding even when the plane's overflying. But you could kind of see those same 2 Ibex on that video. Again, I'll try to get this video to play on a separate later. This is the 185 Ibex they observed on that flight. You'll see there the red dots represent a different location where they found it. And then the size of the red dot corresponds to the size of the group that they found. So they were finding even singles. That camera was able to actually pick up a golden eagle nest with 2 eggs in it that the female was off, but the heat signature from the eggs, the camera even could pick up. So it was pretty impressive to see what it could do. We actually are in the process of installing the same exact camera in our plane. It's taken a lot of time to work through the FAA to kind of get a different modification to the plane, but we're looking to use this technology for a lot of other surveys, just kind of what we were able to see. That said, again, we will fly this next survey in March. We do have another contract to come down to repeat the surveys to get a better idea of what's going on since the last April 8th survey of 2024. Again, we haven't had any female harvest, really, maybe 2 in terms of hunter harvest since 2024, but we want to repeat the survey, see what happened. This kind of shows license numbers through time, going back from when we first started hunting it until recent. what kind of going back to the start, we are trying to get rid of this kind of pendulum swinging, this high license numbers, low license numbers back and building back. And it would be nice to get something constant in there and trying to maintain a constant license, a constant population. The star represents the most recent kind of where we're at right now. I think you'll look at right here, this is a more recent harvest, but again, female harvest has basically been virtually nothing since 2021. And so male harvest has declined. That's purposeful. We've decreased those licenses, but we're still probably looking at this full rule cycle before we see many increases. And again, trying to get rid of the pendulum where you go from, if you look at 2013, 2015, where you see from 60 to 0 to 140, we had a huge jump in the population during those times too, and different strategies trying to maintain that. Satisfaction rating through time, we were pretty steady until we had that kind of larger population decline, and that was driven by hunter harvest. We purposely tried to decline the population from 1,200. It overshot what we were hoping, and that population has been lower than desired in the last kind of 6 years. And so we're trying to, like I said, build back population. Success rate by hunt type, both success rates always been very low, almost, single digits. It's just a really hard hunt, but our rifle success rate and our once in a lifetime has gone down significantly. And so we're looking at kind of the directions forward. I think we've had some discussions with some outside groups on Ibex management. We've had some discussions internally. We are going to propose cuts. What those cuts look like, it's hard to say, but probably pretty significant cuts. For example, the bow licenses, we've killed 2 Ibex. You could offer that there's 200 bow licenses. That opportunity is there, but you're killing 2 on a year. So it's this question about, do you offer an opportunity that's having not an impact, but really not a good hunt? And the satisfaction ratings have decreased a lot. I think we're looking more at, and the other thing is it kind of gives this unmanaged expectation that there's more Ibex out there than there is when we're offering up to 200 bow licenses. Whether we're down to our proposals are 50 bow licenses total over 2 hunts or what it is, we haven't determined the exact license numbers, but we're looking at significant cuts, I guess is the point on that. Same on our once in a lifetime hunts. We're looking at cuts at those 2, either sex, both on the muzzle loader, once in a lifetime, and youth. Everything is going to probably come down to a cut. What that exact number is, we have not determined yet, but we will come back at the next time you hear this with some proposed numbers, but pretty significant cuts. Female immature, there's been people asking for us to completely shut down female immature hunts, and there's 2 things there. One is it is female immature male for a reason. When we reduce the population, we reduce the female segment so much that we skewed the sex ratio more towards males. So there's more males in the population than females, which is, we created that issue, and we need to try to get some kind of parity hopefully back, especially in an ungulate species. It is very unusual to have a male skewed sex ratio. So when last rule cycle, we increased the size of an immature male allowable and that female immature harvest up to 20 inches. It used to be 15, we moved it up to 20 to try to target 1 and 2 year old males to get that sex ratio back. And there was some success in those female immature hunts where they were killing those younger males. I think we want to maintain that license type in the rule structure, but I think we would prefer to do it like we do with bighorn sheep, where we do an up to number and determine on an annual basis what the licenses numbers would be, rather than a set number over the 4 years. So if the population starts growing at a faster speed, we can go up to those numbers. I think we do want to set a cap so everyone knows what that cap would be, but have the ability to not harvest if we want to in that year. It would be post-survey analysis to determine, and post-harvest, determine next year's licenses. And so I think we're looking at that in our female immature licenses rather than having a set number and rule that we draw every year. We are seeing right now with our female immature licenses, a lot of people that are drawing it are just not even going out on the hunt. So they draw the license, don't even go out on the hunt. I don't know if that's because they do research post drawing the license on what the hunt looks like or what. But again, trying to go into have the ability to harvest if need be, if the population grows, but probably at the start of this, not be very small, depending on, again, what some of these surveys say. We're going to be switching to that kind of forward-looking infrared kind of base survey, and it'll get us better data. But that is the biggest thing that I think you'll see is, and again, coming back to you all at the next commission meeting, we've had some initial discussions on that. I think everyone is pretty much in agreement that reduction in license is necessary. That exact number will come back next time with you all to get what we're actually proposing, but we're looking at pretty significant cuts on Ibex. So we could go through all three species, or we could take a break in between on species, or.
Commissioner Lopez has a question for you.
Starting down the unit for X amount of years to allow the population to renew.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Lopez, again, because our harvest has been like 2 females, right? The population is going to be driven by females, and we're seeing 1 to 2 females a year for the last 3 years. We've virtually shut it down, and yet it's not rebuilding. And so, or maybe not rebuilding as fast as we hope. That's why we're proposing going to that up to licenses that would potentially allow 0 female harvest. We're looking at still a male harvest, 1, because we want to get sex ratios back closer to parity, and 2, there still is some older age class males on the mountain. So it might be that you see during the next rule cycle that we offer 0 licenses for female and mature that year if our population's not doing well, or if the surveys show that the growth's not there, or it might be 10, 15. I don't know what it is. We're still in that kind of data analysis. We will definitely be helped out by this next year's survey from the forward info looking red, but absolutely a potential that we would not harvest female and mature in a year if the population we don't think is sustain it. But in all actuality, we have not been killing females over the last 4 years, and we just don't see the population grow.
Thank you for the information, and thank you for admitting that the population is very low. My concern is, this is where the public comments is so important. 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I was sitting there. I was part of the public. I was not a commissioner. And I brought this to the attention. I brought this exactly that the population was declining very fast. What I was told it was the population will bounce out quick because they have twins, because they reproduce fast. So my concern is, how did it get into this point where I can show you an email that I received days ago where they're telling me that they saw 3 items on once in. How much does it cost this hunt? Not only the tag, how much does it cost to go find an Ibex? The time that is spent to be able to harvest it. So I guess this is where I want this rule and the management to be clear. What is the goal? How many individuals should be within the population? Because I don't think we have that. How many individuals should be there? What is the goal? Where are we trying to get? Not just, but I mean, I admire these surveys, they're great. And you guys are searching for the technology. But what are we doing and where are we getting to? That's what I would like to see. That way everybody understands where is the goal and how you're going to get them there.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Mr. Clemente, like I said, I think our goal is between 350 and 700. That's been our goal the last 8 years. Our harvest was nothing on females. And so something else is driving population dynamics. What's driving population dynamics? I don't think we have that understanding right now. I think there's some things in terms of definitely the helicopter surveys show that we are missing at least 50%. And so I think they've become the animals that are on the mountain a lot smarter. And so even though we saw almost double, more than double in that other survey, right? So is that 120, is it 2? But in terms of harvest management, it is not driving population dynamics because we have been harvesting less than 5 animals a year. Is it golden eagles? There's some speculation of that. Is it mountain lions? What is it? Is it in a population standpoint where the female immature female numbers are so low that any amount of offtake is impacting the growth rates? For example, we saw in desert bighorn sheep, once we hit about 80 ewes, 90 ewes, we started seeing populations increase pretty significantly. Is that something that in the Ibex population, when they're at a certain level, we're at the, your sigmoid curve growth on a typical ungulate population, we're not at exponential growth rate during the last 4 years. What does it take to get to that? I don't know where we're at that point. And I think historically we've seen these huge bounce backs. If we would have been harvesting females a lot in the last 3 years and said we're still stable, then you would say harvest is probably driving it. Harvest is not the dynamic driving this. Something else is driving the dynamic. In terms of what the public wants, we have some and maybe we haven't heard it yet this session, but in previous, there's some people that want us to kill every Ibex off that mountain and start bighorn sheep too. And so there's some of this dichotomy of like, some people really want Ibex. There's a lot of people that want Ibex. There's some people that don't want Ibex. And so trying to balance that, and that's why we've stuck with just one mountain range. I think the department is recommending we continue with Ibex and maintain it. That's why we're also proposing the female immature to go basically to a 2B. So we have some to be determined, so we could have years where it's 0 if we were seeing that the harvest was driving it. I think there was the biggest thing that happened, and that's why we're talking about substantial cuts in licenses, is an expectation. When we had more licenses out there, there was an expectation from hunters that drew it that it'd be a good hunt. And so whether that was the case or not, I think the biggest is for us to manage that expectation maybe, and that's managing it through licenses as well too, of not having as many licenses on the mountain with the expectation that, look, that reduced is probably a function of the lower population size, even though female mature licenses did not drive population dynamics.
Anybody else?
I'd like to follow up on Commissioner Clemente's question and ask, well, first of all, I'll tell you that the numbers and what your intention to reduce the number of licenses makes total sense. That's clearly there are too many licenses. I want to ask about the predators. Doesn't this infrared survey give us good data on mountain lions in the Florida mountains as well?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, when they flew that, they didn't see any mountain lions. I definitely think what I think you have is, especially we've seen this in other desert mountain ranges, the Sky Islands, you have transitory lions through there. We've seen it with our desert bighorn sheep populations where you get 2 or 3 in there for a while, maybe have an impact, then they move off the mountain. And so I don't think you have a big core range of established territory mountain lions in there. And it could have been just that day they didn't fly it. They did pick up mountain lions on other surveys, that camera. And so it definitely does. In fact, it picked up a female with kittens that were hidden that we would have never seen in a helicopter survey because it had 2 heat signatures of hidden kittens that the female left way away from. So yes, it does, but I don't think you have a huge core population of mountain lions that just live solely on that mountain. I think they're all, for the most part, transitory, and that's what we see in those desert ranges with mountain lions. In terms of golden eagles, it definitely is a lot of golden eagles in that mountain. That's some of the great perching habitat for, for golden eagles. And there is some predation from that, probably more on kids than anything.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Ask the question regarding mountain lions. What about jaguars? Do they ever come out of Mexico and affect that population at all?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Lopez, there's never been in recent history, we haven't documented a jaguar in that mountain range. The only jaguars documented in New Mexico been in the Pouncing Mountains in recent history. No, I still have 2 species. If we're ready to move off of Ibex, we can go to those.
Yes.
Okay. So moving to Barbary sheep, we made some pretty big changes to Barbary sheep in the last rule cycle of creating multiple hunts across the southeast in our draw area. So just in a general, the Barbary sheep. We try to maintain populations in the southeast, and then we have over the counter where we're trying to prevent range expansion. Barbary sheep is another one from a disease standpoint with desert bighorn sheep. Texas has really done a lot of research in the last few years on Mycoplasma ova and pneumonia being present in Barbary sheep bighorn and the Barbary bighorn interactions, showing that they are carriers and have infected bighorn herds and had some impact. So we're really trying to maintain them in kind of the southeast. We don't really have any desert bighorn sheep populations in that southeast quadrant. And also we had Barbary sheep moving throughout different portions. So we have draw hunts in the southeast, over the counter on the rest of the state. You'll see the 2024 harvest data, about 3,500 licenses sold, 33% success overall. But that's that over the counter hunt, excuse me, kind of decreases that success rate some. You'll see the draw hunts have an average of 43 to between 35 and 43%. Definitely a little bit more male dominated harvest, pretty decent satisfaction rate. I think overall, we're looking at maintaining that hunt structure. I think has worked really well. We've heard good things about it. I don't think we'll looking at any changes to license numbers. One of the things that did occur in the last rule cycle, we do have desert bighorn sheep in the Sacramento Mountains, and we do have Barbary sheep that do reside there as well. So there's been a kind of a campaign in that area to make sure you know the difference between Barbary sheep, bighorn sheep. That's been kind of a big one that we've worked with Wild Sheep Foundation and the local people down there to put up a bunch of signs, the trailheads, et cetera, kind of letting people know the difference between the two subspecies or two species, excuse me. Real quick, just on a number of licenses sold through time, you'll see the draw and over-counter licenses. Draw is predominant licenses, and we get upticks in over-the-counter some years over the others, but overall pretty consistent through time. And then success rates are fairly consistent, that between 35 and really 36 to 32%. So not much variation on an annual basis on success rates on Barbary sheep. And harvest has been pretty stable through time as well. A little bit of a dip in male harvest, but fairly stable through time. We did in the last rule cycle implement female immature hunts on McGregor Range in concert with Fort Bliss. We're working with Fort Bliss to basically say, are we at the right number? Should we implement more? So we're working with the military on that to determine if those hunts are addressing the issue of expanding Barbary sheep on there, and if there's the potential to increase that or where we're at. So working with them, and then like all the rules, we'll adjust the calendar dates for the shift in calendar, excuse me, hunt dates for the calendar shift. So I could stop here if there's questions about Barbary sheep, or I can move into Oryx if you would.
Commissioners? No?
In Unit 34, that's where the bighorn sheep and the Barbary sheep connect, right? Are they being very successful? Is Barbary sheep being declined? Because I believe that's over the counter.
Yeah. Right. Mr. Chair, Commissioner Clemente, yes, I think Barbary sheep have declined some. Our bighorn are doing well. We actually translocated some more bighorn into the Sacramentos this year. When we get to the bighorn rule, we're probably going to propose opening that area for hunting this next rule cycle, whether we hunt in there or not, the ability, but I think it has been successful in reducing that population. Some Barbary sheep are they're like bighorn in rugged areas. I think we definitely reduced early on when we started over the counter, people targeted males, but we definitely see some female harvest in that over the counter as well too.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Clemente.
So moving on to Oryx, I think one of the things that and this is kind of going to be a general thing we look at and I apologize, I didn't mention this at the start of this presentation, but for some of our big game species, we're looking at right now, you have the ability to buy a license from your phone and select e-tagging. And so you can actually buy a license and harvest the animal right then. And so we're proposing for all of our big game species to move that to where you have to buy the license prior to the start of the hunt. And so especially with the e-tagging aspect of it, you all saw kind of a case, I believe, of where someone actually was caught that they bought the license after they harvested the animal and then e-tagged it. There's some trends in the data that show that there's a lot of licenses that have a tagging within a couple of hours. And so there's questions on, did they really buy the license before they were hunting, or were they hunting, bought the license, and then killed? So we're going to propose for all our big game species that you have to buy that license prior to the start of the season especially if you're going to select e-tagging as an option. There's discussions on some of these longer seasons where it's a 30-day season, 15-day season, that maybe they didn't know they were going to come on an over-the-counter hunt that's a 30-day season, and if they could buy the license during the hunt, maybe potentially making it, what we're thinking is if they do that, they're going to have to come in and physically either at an office or a vendor and buy the license and select to a physical carcass tag. So it prevents someone from buying the license while they're hunting, basically. You're going to have to come to a vendor to buy it. So trying to curb that, I don't think it's huge issue, but overall I do think we have some of those issues on that where people are buying the license, they're out there quail hunting or something else, they see an animal that's an over-the-counter license, select e-tagging, and they do it at once versus buying the license ahead of the season. So that's going to be kind of a general proposal we're making. One of the other, and why this reminded me when we pulled up Oryx, is there's also private land over the counter hunts where you could buy those licenses. And that's another species where we see people buying the electronic license and e-tagging on the same day. And so the question is, do we have people potentially buying a private land license, but actually harvesting on public land? We've made some cases on that, but it's a lot easier with the e-tagging if you have the ability to buy the license while you're looking at that animal and tag it and move it off of public land right away before being caught. So one of the things that we do for secondary management for elk is we require private land to kind of register their property. Just show proof that you have property within the GMU. It's not we don't do allocations. We don't do any of the, it's not a formula set for license numbers, but it is that you have to prove that you have private property in that GMU before you or your hunters can buy a license for that. So we're looking at registering ranches on these where we have private land over-the-counter licenses for two reasons. One, we want to be able to track, like, is a 10-acre parcel, we hear this a lot. And whether it's hearsay or reality, we hear people saying, well, that 10-acre parcel or 30-acre parcel, they'd had 30 people come to hunt Oryx on their property. Well, is that really true? We don't know, because we know how many over-the-counter licenses we sold, but we don't know where those licenses, like what property that's aimed towards. So we're looking to do that for all of our over-the-counter species that we have for private land, to where it's just a registration process. It's a one-time registration, basically, and then we automatically update a new ranch number for those properties every year that they get or not ranch number, but a kind of a authorization number that they get, allow themselves or hunters to be able to do it. It's not to apply every single year. It's a one-time, but it will allow us to track kind of where harvest is occurring, et cetera. And that's another one with Oryx. We're seeing the amount of private land over the counter licenses increase. Whether that's because Oryx are increasing on private land or it's because of potentially other issues, this will allow us to track where licenses are being sold and where it's increasing. Overall, for Oryx too, you'll see kind of our management strategy is really trying to maintain the huntable population on White Sands Missile Range, working with the military to maintain that. It's a lot of our once-in-a-lifetime hunts. We're working with White Sands right now to determine license numbers, but as it looks right now, we're probably going to be kind of a constant stable, not much changes in license numbers on White Sands Missile Range. We are looking at potentially some increases to over the counter. I'll get there in a second. We may not go that route. We're still in the data analysis, but if it is, it would be a slight increase in the over the counter. You'll see here our success rates and license numbers for the 2024 season, still pretty high success. and pretty high success on the over the counter, 58% on our off range, excuse me. That's not over the counter for all those. Those are also some off range draw hunts. But, you know, we were suspecting we did increase the off range hunts the last time. We thought that success rate would drop because of that increase we were trying to get at, but our success has stayed stable. Now, whether that's because the population is growing on White Sands military range, or we have some more pockets of off range Oryx that are growing, it's hard to say, but we thought that success rate would drop during this rule cycle, and it has not. So that's why we're looking at potential increases for some off range, some opportunities. On the range, we're estimating anywhere from 3,000 to 3,500 Oryx on range, with the two main, there's kind of the two main hunting areas, Stallion and Rhodes Canyon. We think between Stallion and Rhodes Canyon, 2,200, 2,400, and then additional animals, obviously off range. We'll collaborate with the two military bases for Fort Bliss and White Sands on those specific draw hunts. We're working with them now, as we said. Again, probably not much changes on range licenses. Just a general harvest trends through time, maintained. Again, 23, 24 is the more recent through the rule cycle. We'll be analyzing 25 here pretty soon, but you'll see it's been we saw a pretty decent increase from 15 to 19. That was a function of numbers being down on White Sands missile range around 2013, a little bit before 13, until we really saw a population increase into about the 19 era. Satisfaction ratings on that kind of top graphic, that's broken down by the different hunt areas, McGregor, off range, the broken horn hunts, etc., maintaining pretty at the same level. We just haven't seen it change much. Same with our success rates. You'll look, that top line is success on the once in a lifetime hunts, and that bottom line is the success rates on the off range. That's the one where I kind of mentioned before. We did have just a kind of a peak in 2020. It just must have been a year that more Oryx are moving off range, but we really did think under this rule cycle we'd see a drop in that as we increase licenses, but did not. And we increased licenses of, I think, about 15 to 20% depending on the hunt month, and still maintain that higher success. So again, like I said, maintaining some of the early discussions with our military bases, and then working with our looking at that off range over the counter, or excuse me, off range potential increases, and then the registration for the over the counter private land licenses. I think you'll see that proposal come for deer and pronghorn too, just on a registration on the private land over the counter licenses. And then for all these species, like I said, we'll host multiple public meetings throughout the state that will be hybrid, and then come back to you all with kind of more further refined recommendations in terms of actual license numbers and our recommendations. So with that, I'd take comments on that.
Commissioners, does anybody have any discussion or questions? Chief Liley? Looks like I have a couple people from the public. How about Logan McGarrah?
Logan McGarrah with the Southern New Mexico chapter of Safari Club International. Members of the commission, Director Sloan, Chief Liley. My primary comments today will be focused on Ibex in particular. We certainly commend the department on their updated population survey techniques. Our members are quite concerned about the Ibex population, and we would agree that at this time, we would strongly advocate for ending the nanny hunts at least. In light of some of this new information and this very detailed population survey we're able to do now, one thought that comes to mind is potentially, as Commissioner Clemente said, have a very detailed policy where if we, for example, have 500 total Ibex on the mountain and 300 nannies, we will issue 50 nanny tags that year, as an example. But perhaps consider that as part of your proposal if we don't just shut the nanny hunt down for this whole rulemaking cycle. Another proposal that we would urge the department to consider would be on those, what we now call a billy tag, what's considered a billy tag. The bag limit is actually either sex, and we would advocate changing that to a mature billy, which we would propose to be defined as any Ibex over 20 inches, Currently for the female immature tags, it's a female, any female, or a male under 20 inches. So we feel like it would be very easy for a hunter to make that distinction in the field. Shouldn't be hard. With that, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Magera. Gary Romero.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Carrie Romero on behalf of the New Mexico Council of Outfitters and Guides. First, I just want to say thank you to Chief Liley. Earlier this week, he and his staff hosted the Council of Outfitters and Guides Boards of Directors, and we had a several-hour meeting to go over each rule individually and discuss our concerns and hear our thought process on each one. We really, really appreciate that opportunity. We know that it's not required, and so we really appreciate that. I think what was great during that meeting is we are on the same page for like over 90% of everything that's going to open this year. So that was really encouraging. I think the one area in the exotics rule where we kind of diverge is with Oryx, off-range Oryx. Outfitters tend to feel like that off-range Oryx hunt, while I understand that the department is not really managing that off-range Oryx hunt because they're focused on the on-range Oryx hunt, but that Oryx hunt has really become a great opportunity for both resident and non-resident hunters. And there is a decline in the off-range Oryx right now and the trophy quality. So if we could keep those numbers stable and not increase the off-range, and then also the changes that are going to be made to the private land Oryx and across the board on the over-the-counter landowner tags is great. We're in agreement with that. So hopefully that helps to solve some of what we're seeing in off-range Oryx. In terms of Ibex, we completely agree. And actually, I agree with what Logan said about changing it to be mature Billy rather than the either sex. But first, I want to kind of go back and just kind of remind the commission that anytime there is a hunt code for the draw for any species that's under 7 tags, that means there is no non-resident opportunity. And we're fine with that. The Ibex are in a free fall. We understand that probably hunters are not responsible for, that population decline at this point, but it's definitely something that we can't market. The trophy quality is gone. The Ibex are just not there. So we're totally fine, and that includes the enhancement tag. We are totally fine with suspending. I mean, I understand you can't suspend the program completely. It's difficult to reestablish a hunt code once we disappear it, but going down as low as we possibly can on the Ibex numbers is what we would prefer. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Chief Liley, those are really great presentations. Thank you very much for all your work with you and your team. Any more questions from commissioners?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for how clear you have put the information and how transparent the department is being with this. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to item number 16, which is general public comment. We're going to allow 3 minutes for each commentator. And I'll just start with you, Carrie.
Thanks again. For the record, Carrie Romero on behalf of the New Mexico Council of Outfitters and Guides. This wasn't really a presentation, but Chief Liley kind of alluded to it. And so I just wanted to give our input on the change to the manner and method that will basically require that you purchase a license a certain number of hours in advance before the hunt starts. And I think the original thought process was kind of to do 48 hours, which is the way we do bear and cougar. But that is problematic for the outfitting industry from the standpoint of we have a lot of non-resident hunters that come in on a Friday and the hunt starts on Saturday. So what we talked about earlier this week is just doing the day before, not putting an hour cap on it. And that's workable for us. We're fine with that. Some like Chief Liley was saying, some of the ones that are, month-long hunts, that's kind of a different conversation. If you have a hunter call you and it's like January 8th and they want to hunt January 9th or whatever, then that's going to be something where maybe the conversation changes a little bit. Maybe going to a vendor will solve that problem. It kind of gets a little bit difficult in areas where you have a long distance between the hunting area and where the vendor is located at. So like if you've got Walmart in Socorro and you're in Magdalena, that might not be doable. But we can have that conversation later on in the rulemaking process. And then the other thing that I just wanted to say, which I kind of alluded to earlier, that we are in favor of is to have an authorization code associated with anything that is a landowner permit, essentially, just like we do in secondary elk. So everything can kind of be tracked, the ranches can be monitored, and then we know where those over-the-counter landowner permits species are being harvested. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Jesse DeBell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Jesse DeBell, New Mexico Wildlife Federation. And the Wildlife Federation is very appreciative of all the presentations that were done today, but especially very much like Mr. Romero did, I'd like to commend Chief Liley for contacting the Federation, and he and his team spent the time to meet with us and go through each of these recommendations and proposals and potential recommendations in great detail. We had a wonderful dialogue, had the opportunity to, in kind of a close-knit setting, have conversations about the pros and cons of different approaches, and a lot of questions were answered. And I think it makes this entire process much more efficient, much more comfortable, much more positive. And I think that's going to also be reflected in the outcome. So thank you very much, Chief Liley. Thank you very much, Commissioners.
Thank you very much, Jesse. Tom Patterson.
Thank you, Chair Stump. Commissioners, Tom Patterson, President, New Mexico Cattle Growers Association. We got 4 topics, which I'll run through. The first, again, has to do with elk. We know that we're facing a 4-year elk rule this year. We'd remind you that the Department of Game and Fish does not have range scientists on its staff. We would support such an endeavor for funding purposes in the legislature. We don't know how you're going to manage elk populations if you don't know what the land and water resources can tolerate. We would re-urge you in the 4-year elk rule as we go into that to consider multiple use management, which includes highway safety, it includes livestock. Please don't leave just the crumbs for the livestock industry, because if you do, you will be hurting hunting opportunities, local hunting opportunities, and you will be hurting our local economies. On gray wolves, we know that gray wolves have penetrated, one gray wolf at least has penetrated into New Mexico. The department was successful in capturing it and taking it back to Colorado. We appreciate that. We are very concerned about what happens when we have uncollared gray wolves penetrate into New Mexico. What is the plan? Who's going to compensate our ranchers for livestock depredations from gray wolves? If you need, again, our support for funding on either of those to capture them or for funding, please, we'd be delighted to work with you on that. On Mexican wolves, HR 4255, Representative Gosar's bill to delist the Mexican wolf and to delink recovery in the United States from Mexico may be heard in the House this month. If it were to pass, questions that we have, what has the Department of Game and Fish been doing since the meeting we had in reserve about management of Mexican wolves? Because it's coming, where the department will be charged with that responsibility. It's going to be a complicated process. Is there a plan? Are you willing to work with the Fish and Wildlife Service on a plan? Please, we would be delighted to work with you to coordinate any sort of plan with them, with the ranching industry, with our local law enforcement, all of whom have a stake in this. And finally, New World screwworm. As soon as the temperatures go up this spring, we're going to, it's not a question of whether, it's a question of when. And wildlife are going to be the vector that most likely vector to introduce New World screwworm into the United States. And it will have devastating impacts on our wildlife populations and on our livestock industry. So if you don't have a plan for dealing with it, we urge you, please get one. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Charlie Trask.
Hi, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Charlie Trask. I live in Los Alamos. I'm a native New Mexican, and that tells you how old I am. I've been hunting and fishing forever, it seems like. Unfortunately, I became a mobility impaired hunter about 15 years ago. And because of that, I've dealt with the mobility impaired rules and regulations. And I appreciate the opportunity that the game department has offered in terms of mobility set aside hunts. Those are terrific. And I would advocate that y'all keep those in mind when you're setting the seasons and hunt codes. But I did run into a snag, and that's a requirement that I have to re-up every 4 years. And I went to the Los Alamos meeting and requested that the commission take an action to delete the last sentence of the regulation that requires a mobility person to re-up. It's getting more and more difficult to find doctors. The other thing is a mobility impaired person has a lot of difficulty just getting to the doctor and that sort of thing. It's a tremendous pain for those of us that have to deal with it. So if I could, I'm trying to get an advocate on the commission that will push for this rule change. It's very simple. You can delete one sentence in the regulations and it's done. Once you become mobility, the rule says permanently disabled. It doesn't say permanently for 4 years. And so it's kind of a silly thing actually to ask us to come back in and re-up that. So I would ask for your consideration in this. I did get Commissioner Witt answered my email and Chair Stump. And for some reason, Commissioner Lopez, I don't think your email works. I can't seem to get an email through to you. But I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Charlie. Do we have anyone online? No one online today. Commissioner, do you have any comments or anything you'd like to say? Nope. I'd just like to say thanks again for all the work we've done in the past year, you guys, and I'm looking forward to this coming year of a lot of hard work with you all. And on that note, let's move on to executive session. Can I have which will be closed to the public? Can I have a motion to enter executive session, please?
I so move to adjourn into executive session, close to the public pursuant to section 10-15-1 H7 NMSA 1978 to discuss attorney-client privileges, litigation update.
Is there a second?
Second.
Director, please call the roll.
Commissioner Witt,
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez,
Yes.
Commissioner Fulper,
Yes.
Vice Chair Clemente,
Yes.
Chair Stump.
Yes.
Motion passes.
We are adjourned to executive session. Greg, thanks for being online today. Thank you. Appreciate you being online.
Being patient with me here and let me do that.
Hope to see you at the next meeting.
Yes, sir.
This commission had adjourned into executive session, closed to the public During the executive session, the commission discussed only those matters specified in its motion to adjourn. It took no action as to any matter. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chair. Motion to adjourn the January 9, 2026 State Game Commission meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No opposed. We stand adjourned.
Y'all take care and we'll see you the next one.
Okay, Greg, be safe out there.